guys, I hope everybody is fine. So today we're going to discuss about the China's debt trap policy. So let's firstly watch the video and then we'll discuss about what's going on.
China is in the midst of a rapid push to gain economic and political ascendancy across the Asia-Pacific region and the world. And it's splashing out billions of dollars across the globe in concessional loans to developing countries for infrastructure projects. But what happens when countries, often poorer than China, can't pay them back?
Experts warn Beijing is offering up bad loans as a form of entrapment to gain influence and power across the world.
Here's how it works. Poorer nations are lured by China's offer of cheap loans for transformative infrastructure projects. Then, when predictably, these countries are unable to keep up with their repayments, Beijing can demand concessions or other advantages in exchange for debt relief. This is known as debt trap diplomacy. Let's take Sri Lanka for example. Protests erupted last year when Sri Lanka was forced to hand over control of the failed Hambantota port project over to China after it found itself billions of dollars in debt to Beijing. China now has control of a key port on the doorstep of regional rival India and a strategic foothold along a key commercial and military waterway. At the same time, a little closer to home, Australia has been sluggish to respond to China's spreading influence in the South Pacific. Chinese loans have gone from 0 to 1.8 billion in a decade. And some of our neighbours are already heavily laden with debt to Beijing. Fiji owes China $500 million, and Tonga now owes more than 160 million. That's a third of its GDP. Tonga's also been forced to admit it may fail to repay its debts. That stoked fears other small Pacific countries could fall into debt distress and possibly become vulnerable to diplomatic pressure from Beijing. Earlier this year, reports that China was moving to create a military base in Vanuatu sparked a panic in Australia. Prime Minister Scott Morrison has now announced the creation of a new infrastructure bank for projects across the region.
At the heart of the issue of Chinese investment is President Xi Jinping's flagship economic policy, the One Belt, One Road initiative.
It's a $1 trillion project aimed at connecting countries across continents for trade with China at its centre. Beijing has characterised the project as a win-win for both its global trade ambitions and for infrastructure-starved developing economies.
The belt connects the land, the road moves on the sea. The promise that they hold is joint prosperity.
But in reality, many vulnerable countries are finding themselves overwhelmed by Chinese debt. The Centre for Global Development highlights 8 countries it says find themselves at risk of being unable to repay their loans. In Montenegro, China loaned the fledgling European state more than $1 billion in 2015 to complete a key highway linking its port of Bar to landlocked Serbia. Now, debt levels are at 80% of GDP. Montenegro faces the prospect of either having to abandon the half-complete project or negotiate for more money from China, pushing it deeper into Beijing's sphere of influence. And in Africa, China is financing major projects across the continent, and Beijing's level of investment is gathering pace. In 2017 alone, the value of Chinese projects in Africa was $105 billion, and the value of Chinese loans to Africa has tripled since 2012. In Zambia, for example, the signs of Chinese investment are everywhere. Schools, surgeries, and construction projects bear Chinese symbols. And a vast new network of roads is being built, all with Chinese finance.
For now, many countries are enjoying the investment injection, new highways, airports, and promises of economic development. But it may only be a matter of time until they too are overwhelmed by debt.
Amid the debates about China's growing influence and fears Beijing wants to expand its strategic military presence across the globe, it's easy to forget they have only a single overseas military base in the African nation of Djibouti. The United States, meanwhile, has an estimated 800 bases across 70 countries.
So while Chinese money may be putting some countries at risk, and Beijing could be wielding its loans as a strategic tool, it's not the only country projecting its power around the world.
Just how deep President Xi Jinping's ambitions run is unclear. But with this now dubbed the Asian century, there's no doubt he plans on China leading the way, instead of following the pack.
So guys, this was the video of China the Trap. So basically, I'm an Indian, and my reaction on this basically. So China is doing like a very he's being very clever all the way all around the world. So initially, he first set up the manufacturing industry. He he's I mean, their GDP got increased a lot, and probably the China is a very big economy now. So now their next step is to to go for the One Belt and One Road initiative, and to set up a debt trap to all the countries which are small, and those who have less economy. Those countries are poor, so they're going to put a debt trap on that. For example, let's we saw in the video Sri Lanka. Uh, China, China developed one port, Hambantota port in the Sri Lanka, and just to counter India. India is a regional, very big power. To counter, so they to set up the military base over there. So even China is buying a lot of lands in Australia as well to counter the Australia, and to keep the Australia in a debt trap. Mongolia also, and a lot of the African countries like Djibouti, and in the Indian Ocean like Madagascar, Maldives. So the Chinese trying to put that a trap. What firstly China does, China builds the roads there to infrastructure projects, give the jobs to them. Then gradually trying to put them in that a trap, like. So one big thing China is doing now, the CPEC project, which is going through the Pakistan. That's a very big thing. China is developing one Gawada port. So their people are speaking only the Chinese only. Even the Pakistani people, Urdu speaking people, they're learning Chinese to interact with the Chinese, and there are a lot of people. Most of the people are the Chinese there. So they're trying to try to enhance their capability in the Pakistan region. To you, everybody knows that Pakistan is dooming. It's a their economy is very sluggish nowadays. So, and that's what is happening nowadays. Chinese trying to Chinese in a very big way to counter these Pakistan as well, and gradually China gonna snatch the land of Pakistan if this will be the way. So that's all my analysis on the China and Pakistan thing, and the China One Road and One Belt initiative. So guys, thank you for watching. I bid for the farewell. Thank you.